needles and field tested it, and now there is capability within the organization to be able to upscale it. The community we work with, we know their problems, we understand their needs, and that is how we are going to be able to upscale this program. The regulators, which are government in our case, we have sufficient credibility and experience of working with with government. So there should be they should help us in upscaling our program. So we are going to affect 1,500 people. We are going to generate cooking fuel for 1,500 people from the charcoal that's going to be sold to Basanti Devis. 400 hectares of land is going to be regenerated. What I should mention here is that each gasifier would be able to clear about 135 hectares of land from pine needles and give the biodiversity a chance to regenerate. We will generate 2160 megawatt hours of electricity from each year, and that is like equivalent of 24,000 people's needs in the villages. And we start generating surplus revenue in the 3rd year of operation. Now, doing this, we provide a opportunity for about 300 families like Basanti Devis to be able to stay in their village, because now they can make an income, they've got fuel there, and the regenerated biodiversity will help them get water, fodder, and things like that. This is also paving way for 3.5 more million families in this state to try and adopt this solution. And we have tremendous upscaling potential in neighboring state of Himachal Pradesh, neighboring country of Nepal, in other mountain ranges like Andes, parts of Africa. What I'd like to mention here is that this commercial pilot would also give us space to look at our organizational systems and perhaps help us zero in on models for investment. Thank you.
Thank you, Rajneesh. Anne-Marie?
Sure, I'd be happy to. One thing I found really helpful as you told your story was you told a story. You started with a person and you gave us a really good sense of her experience and what that meant through the life of the opportunity that you were sharing. And I found that really helpful. One thing I think might have been helpful at the end to sort of bring that to life might have been actually, when you had such a nice set of metrics, bringing that down into metrics for people and metrics for the environment, or doing something at the end where, because you're actually having impact in a lot of different ways on the communities in which you're working, that could really be highlighted. And then since some of those have ripple effects, so it changes not only the opportunity for the 1,500 people in the village, but also for people who have access to energy down the line, I think you could have structured it in a way that could have highlighted a lot of interesting downstream benefit too. And one other thing that would be helpful for me to understand, and I have to say this is probably because I'm a grant giver usually, but when people sort of lump in the same bucket, and this is money I'm going to get from grants or loans, that always really puzzles me, because to me there's a really different thought process you would go through to decide where you would get money and temporally how long you would need it for and how you might repay it versus not, what the incentive sets of the people are that would give you those different kinds of money. So I'd encourage you to continue to unpack that, because I think that would be helpful for you. But thank you.
Thank you. Russ?
And continuing on the metrics thing, once you built up the story, it's clear you're depending on these first 3 units to work. And I was trying to find the way to plug into what the unit economics were at that level. You know, I was trying to see how big was the village, how far out did the gathering area have to go, what would the economics be in terms of turning positive. You mentioned that in your cumulative slides, but it would have been easier for me to pick that up if you had shown me one and then gone to the layering that. So that just would have helped me a little bit more with that. The second thing, and maybe just in the background here, it's clear you're turning a switch and you're putting this to use. So has there been some breakthrough in gasification of pine needles that has allowed this to happen, that it hasn't happened so far? Is it, so just maybe a little bit more history or anecdote, you know, why is this right now of the time? Is it technology has changed? Is it you've seen it deployed somewhere else and it just hasn't been deployed in your part of the pine needle forest up against the mountains? You know, a little bit more why this switch is turning on right now. I missed a little bit of that history.
So Rajneesh, for me, I'd say my biggest set of questions are all around pine needles. So I know what they are, but I have no idea how many bushels or however you measure pine needles. How much can a person pick up in an hour, a day, whatever? How far do I have to walk? You made the comment, the story about the woman having to walk further all the time to get things. Well, it seems to me, in my mind, she might have to be walking further and further and further every year or every month, I don't know, to get pine needles. So I don't know, the supply and the economics of pine needles, I don't know anything about, and you didn't tell me. And then my perception from occasionally having pine needles in my fireplace is that they just go poof, and they burn like instantly. So I have somewhere between no idea what their fuel capabilities are, or the little idea I have is kind of a negative one, which it seems like they're so instant, you don't get a lot of bang for your buck or BTU for your needle or whatever the right. So because this, I've actually never heard anybody do this on pine needles. I think you'd actually have to address, as part of this, kind of the down and dirty part of, here's how this works specifically with pine needles. And then the unit model that was mentioned, you can build up from there. Brad, any last? We got a little bit of time. So.
I agree 100% with everything that was said. And having just finished Husk Power last year, I'm a big fan of biomass gasification. But in that, we know that a big issue of it is just what Jeff brought up, the transportation. So I have the same picture in my mind of how far is she going out to collect these. But I like how you've turned a negative in terms of transportation cost of biomass into an income-generating business for the person to collect. So I think that is a good twist on it. But I kind of have the same need to know how many hectares per kilowatt. So how fast does it regenerate? Because you have, I don't know if you have one crop of pine needles a year or two crop of pine needles a year. So something along the economics that would show that works would be useful. And along the lines that Anne-Marie was saying, I have the same question, although I think you can solve the problem of grant versus loan from the point of view of once you do the pilot, and I think if you had these economics down for the pilot, that's probably more grant because it's high risk. But I think if you prove this, then you're definitely a candidate for a loan because this is like a utility company, and that would be financed by loan. You'd put the plant in, and then you'd get a stream of income over time. So clearly be a loan candidate, but right now I think with the questions, it's probably risk. So that would be grant transfer to loan. Once you de-risk it, might be a way to think about that.
Okay.
By the way, Rajneesh, one more, since I had made a note, but Brad reminded me of the Husk Power analogy. I think you said that you do all this, you then create gas, which creates energy, which then you sell to the utility. So I was just interested, how come you don't use it? How come you guys don't use that energy rather than sell it? So you've got a minute or so to respond to at least a couple of these.
Yeah. So just for everyone to know that pine needles have very high calorific value, as good as high quality wood. And we get about 12 tons of pine needles from a hectare. And you need about 135 hectares of forest to run a 120 kilowatt power plant for 24 hours a day, 300 days a year. So those are the economics. And we generate power at about 4 cents a unit, and we sell it at 10 cents a unit. So those are the unit economics.
4 cents a kilowatt hour?
4 cents a kilowatt hour. That's one unit, right? Yeah.
This is getting more interesting all the time, but we're running out of time.
Yeah.
Those are good numbers to put up there.
Yeah.
And I think I just forgot your last comment, Jeff.
That was close enough, Rajneesh.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.